Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Today we're doing something a little different. We're literally descending into the labyrinth of the human mind. We're going to explore a deeply philosophical and frankly pretty moody landscape, the architecture of our own unconscious. If you've ever felt like your life is just running on a loop, this is where we finally uncover why. Let me start by asking you a pretty direct question. Why do you keep making the exact same painful mistakes? Seriously, think about it for a second. Why do we keep ending up in the same toxic relationships, those same unfulfilling jobs, or facing the exact same financial crises over and over? A lot of us just shrug our shoulders, right? We chalk it up to bad luck, we tell ourselves we just haven't met the right person or found the right opportunity yet. But what if luck has absolutely nothing to do with it? That brings us to a really chilling realization from the pioneering psychiatrist Carl Jung. He famously said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Jung didn't believe in fate as some mystical, predetermined destiny. Not at all. He believed that what we call fate is actually an invisible script, and it's written by our own unconscious mind. So that heartbreak, the failure, the disappointment, it might not be happening to you, but rather through you. All right, Section 1, Unmasking the Jungian Shadow. To really understand this hidden antagonist of our psychological journey, we first have to look at the structure of our personality. Jung described our psyche as having different layers, and the two we really need to look at right now are the persona and the shadow. The persona, well, that's just the mask we wear to fit in. It's that highly curated version of ourselves we present at work, or that polite, slightly strained smile we force on a bad first date. But right behind that mask is the shadow. These are the dark parts of ourselves that we were explicitly told to hide when we were children, the traits that the world basically told us were completely unacceptable. So the absolutely crucial point here is understanding exactly what the shadow is. By definition, it's the suppressed, disowned, or denied aspects of the self that operate from the unconscious mind. And here's the major catch. Hiding traits like anger, jealousy, neediness, or even your ambition doesn't make them magically disappear. No way. They simply retreat into our unconscious mind, and from the shadows, they secretly take control of our reality. When we're living on autopilot, it's actually the shadow that's running the show. Let's move right along into Section 2, Projection and Repetition Compulsion. Let's see exactly how this shadow builds into our physical world through two highly destructive mechanisms. The first mechanism is projection. This is an automatic, totally unconscious process. Imagine your mind as a giant movie projector, and the people around you are just blank screens. Because you completely deny certain dark traits within yourself, your mind literally projects them onto others. It is incredibly seductive because it completely blinds us to our own flaws. We become absolutely 100% convinced that the problem is them, not us. This brilliantly illustrates the mirror effect we see in our everyday relationships. Notice how a buried desire for appreciation often translates into constantly judging other people as arrogant show-offs. Or if you secretly fear being unproductive, you're likely going to feel extreme, completely disproportionate frustration when you perceive someone else as lazy. The traits that trigger you the absolute most in other people are almost always massive clues pointing directly to your own unintegrated shadow. The second mechanism is repetition compulsion. It answers the question of why we go back to the familiar, even when it's totally chaotic. Our deep psychological wounds try to heal by recreating the exact trauma that caused them in the first place. Subconsciously, we're thinking, if I can just recreate this scenario, this time I can control it. This time I can finally get it right. And that is exactly why someone might unknowingly seek out emotionally distant or abusive partners time and time again. We are literally drawn to the familiarity of the chaos. Now, this isn't just some personal relationship theory. In Section 3, we look at the shadow at work. Let's anchor this in our real-world careers, because the shadow definitely punches the clock and wreaks havoc in the office. Just look at how unchecked shadows manifest in the workplace. You have defensive leaders who suppress their own vulnerability, which completely shuts down the exact open dialogue they claim they want. You've got micromanagers whose constant, agonizing interference is actually just a massive projection of their own fear of losing control. We even see what Jung called golden shadows, untapped intuitive or creative strengths that professionals have buried just because they felt those traits weren't corporate enough. Ultimately, a leader's unexamined shadows create a deeply toxic workplace culture where everyone is just endlessly fighting each other's projections in a vicious cycle of conflict and blame. The corporate cost here can be absolutely catastrophic. Research highlights companies like Theranos and Boeing. When executives face intense pressure but haven't examined their own deep insecurities or their relationship with power, they project those anxieties outward. So instead of facing their own limitations, they scapegoat their employees. They create an environment where truth-telling is dangerous and whistleblowers become the villains. They fight the shadow rather than addressing the real systemic issues. But here's where it gets really interesting. In Section 4, we finally introduce the solution, the elixir, steps to shadow work. We know the shadow is running the script, so how do we start taking the pen back? Shadow work is quite literally the key to unlocking the chains of the unconscious. It's how we break free from repetitive trauma and finally stop the cycle of projection. Jung believed that the ultimate goal of human life wasn't to be perfect, but to be whole. He called this process individuation, and you simply cannot achieve individuation without turning around and facing your darkest self. So here is our map for this inner descent. It's a 5-step framework for reading your own hidden manuscript. First, identify the shadow. Second, accept it without judgment. Third, trace the origin. Fourth, dialogue the active imagination. And fifth, integrate the energy. It requires some radical self-honesty for sure, but it is the ultimate act of self-discovery. Let's walk through exactly how you execute this. All right, steps 1 and 2 are all about identification and acceptance. You're going to want to keep a shadow journal. Notice your disproportionate emotional reactions, like when someone makes a super minor mistake and you feel absolute blinding rage. That's a trigger. That is your shadow waving hello at you. Once you spot those traits, whether it's jealousy, selfishness, or anger, you have to accept them without judgment. You meet your darkness with softness, not shame. Listen, feeling jealous or anger doesn't make you a bad person, it just means you're human. Next up, steps 3 and 4. This is where you trace the trait back to its origin. Where in your childhood were you told that being loud or being emotional was just not okay? Find that. Then you do something Jung called active imagination. You close your eyes, picture this shadow part of yourself, and you literally have a gentle dialogue with it. You ask it, what are you trying to protect me from? The key here is you don't argue with it, you just listen. Finally, step 5. This is the ultimate goal. We do not destroy the shadow. The shadow holds immense, raw power. We want to integrate that energy and bring it into the light. So if you have buried anger, you don't suppress it, you harness it to set firm, healthy boundaries. If you uncover deep jealousy, you transform that exact energy into drive and ambition for your own life. You are literally turning your greatest hidden liabilities into your absolute greatest gifts. I want to leave you with this haunting question to really chew on. What truth are you avoiding? What part of yourself have you buried? Because remember, if a problem keeps showing up in your life over and over again, you are the common denominator. But the moment you finally look in the mirror, take responsibility, and make the unconscious conscious, that is the exact moment you gain the power to completely rewrite your reality. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you on the next one.